There we go. Well, hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me or? Okay, good. No? Oh. Okay, hello? Can anybody hear me in the back? How about now? Okay. This is a macro look at macro photography. It's going to be a little technical, I guess, in times, but how many people think macro photography is expensive to get involved in? Is macro photography expensive to get involved? If you don't have a macro lens today, do you think it's expensive? Would I tell you that you can get involved for $15? So I'm going to go over the parts and stuff that'll bring that to light. I've got a bunch of stuff up here that I'm going to try and show as I'm going through and tell you about what it costs. So let's get rolling. What is macro photography? The proper definition is a photo taken at a magnification of 1:1. That's real life size. This is a 1:1 macro shot. So you get an idea, but I'm going to show you some other ones that make it. And then what to shoot in macro. Just about anything that you can think of. I'm a bug shooter, so I have lots of bugs. This is a spider. I'm going to give you just this slide and the next one are stacked slides. I'm not going into stacking, or so just to show you what can be done. This is about 20 or 25 pictures put together in Photoshop. This one is at 5 times magnification, and it's about 100 pictures put together to create this one. So that's my bugs, and there's lots more bugs. Water drops, it's really not 100% macro, but it helps if you have a macro lens to get these kinds of pictures. And then, of course, more bugs and frogs and more bugs and more bugs. So this is definitely a 1:1 shot. And now for the equipment we use. I'm going to talk about macro lenses, extension tubes. Oh, it's too low. Oh, okay. A macro bellows, reversing rings, lens coupling rings, close-up filters, and flashes. A micro lens. You can buy them that are like this. This focuses to infinity. This happens to be a 200 millimeter macro lens, but it's a 1:1. The only thing that's different than this one, this is a 100 millimeter macro lens, is that I can be further away and still get 1:1 shot. So that's something to think about if you decide to buy a macro lens. Do you want a 50 millimeter macro lens? You'll have to be this far away, or do you want one that you can be a foot away and get 1:1? This one is a 2:1 macro lens, and this is $500. But it's all manual. You have to focus. We'll talk a lot about focus near the end. But this will go, it can focus to infinity, which makes it good for portraits and landscapes and anything you'd use a 100mm lens for. Plus it goes down to 2:1. So, and like I said, this one used, this 200mm Nikkor lens was about $1,800 on the used market. So they're still highly prized. They're not make anymore. So they're, you know, it's a very good lens. So I said they were from 500 to 1500. Laowa, which made this lens, they have a system of lenses that you can go from 10x, 10 times life size, to 50 times life size. It's 3 or 4 lenses together in a big box. But it's, so you can spend, and if you want to get into the movies, you can spend $2,000 or $3,000 on a macro cine lens. So that's kind of where you want to be. So this is the kind of the expensive end. It's so now we're going to get into other things. This is with my 105 shot. It's a quarter, which I think everybody knows pretty much so what a quarter looks like. And this is a 2x picture of the quarter. So it's you can see the difference in the magnification. Extension tubes. That's these little things here that there's no glass in them. There's 3 of them here. You just take them apart. There's no glass, so they're only thing they do is move your lens further away from your sensor, which means you can focus closer. These really don't magnify. I know I put the word magnification in the explanation up there, but that's not what happens. But with these, and I'm going to use a 50mm lens on almost everything I talk about, because just about everybody has one, and so I want to make it as applicable as possible. So if you have, let's say, 25 millimeters of a extension tube, and you divide the 50 millimeters into that, you come up with 0.5. So in the magnification, the normal magnification of a 50mm lens is about 0.15. So you you add the 5 and the 0.15 and you get 0.65. Let me see. And you can buy these singularly or in groups. This is a group of 3, and they work best on a lens from 24 to 85, because let's say this is 68 millimeters, all these together, and you're dividing 24 into it, you get quite a bit of magnification. If you start adding 85 into it or 100 into it, you only get like 0.6 if you have 100. So you don't, so if you stay within the 24 to 85, you're going to get some increased magnification or relative magnification. That's what's going to happen. The cost, are these anywhere from about $15 to about $150. This is a really old set. And I paid about $25 or $30 for it 100 years ago or so. But today, I just looked them up on Amazon today. They're $130. So you can go, and these have contacts. That's another thing. The cheaper ones don't have contacts that connect to your lens. So that makes these more expensive because they have all the electrical that goes through it. And you'll see your aperture and your focus, autofocus, which you won't use very much anyway, but you'll be able to use it on your lens. And this is 68 millimeter extension tubes and a 50 millimeter lens, and you can get about 1.5 to 1. So, and this is with the reversed lens, you can get 2.5 to 1. And I'm going to talk about reversed rings here pretty soon. So with extension tubes, for let's just say 60 bucks, and a reversing ring for 15, you can get up to 2.5 magnifications for, less than $75. The Macro Bellis, that's this goodie. It's the same as a extension tube. All the principles apply when you put your lens on and you move it out. You get the magnification that whatever you want, and you measure it from, on your camera, you'll see where your sensor, there'll be a little line with a circle, through a circle. So from your sensor to your lens, if you have 100 millimeters and you have a 50 millimeter lens on it, that's going to be approximately 2 times magnification. This bellows is kind of nice in the fact that you get the magnification by moving your bellows in and out, and you focus by turning the whole camera and lens and everything. So that's your focus, and this is your magnification. This is a Nikon PB6, and it was $210 used because Nikon doesn't make them anymore. So these are pretty prized units because they have this focusing part on them. A lot of bellows don't. They just have the upper part. So that's good, bad, or indifferent, I don't know. But if you have a bellows that doesn't have the lower part, you need a rail. This is a focusing rail. This one is fairly expensive because it's fairly accurate. This is about $150-ish. I don't remember what I paid for it, but the increments on this one is about 10 microns. So that's 10 1,000ths of a millimeter. So that's, a micron is in the thousandths of a millimeter. So you can move it that fine if you need to. The fly, I use that to do the 100 stacks, pictures to stack. So that's kind of a pain in the neck to use. You can get electric ones for $1,000, or, well, they have that Wii Macro out now. I think it's like down into the $500, $400 range. So, and that's electric. You move your camera back and forth to do your focus and focus stacking. a reverse ring. It just turns your, this is my 50 millimeter lens that I have on here, and I have it reversed. This is where you would normally, your camera would normally mount to this end. So it's literally reversed. The ring has whatever mount your camera is. Of course, I'm using Nikon, so this has a Nikon mount and a 58 millimeter thread on the front. So I screw that into the body or click it into the body, and then I screw my lens on, and I got a reversed lens. And those are $10 to $15. Why is this different? Well, you have to, the tubes, when you reverse your lens, a normal lens, if your 50 millimeter is put in normal, it's taking a big scene and making it small. When you reverse it, it's taking a small image and making it big on your sensor. So that's the difference. This is just moving these are just moving your lens away from your sensor so you can focus closer. There's really no magnification. It's like if I'm here with a normal lens and I want to take her picture and I say she's too small, I just walk up closer to her. Same thing. You just, and she's bigger on my sensor. So with these, there's no glass in these at all. There's nothing. So that's kind of works. There are all that good and bad stuff that goes with everything. Nothing's perfect. But for $15, and if you have, well, a 24 or even an 85, you can reverse them, and you'll get the magnification of whatever that is. The 50, I know, is about 1:1. And for $10 or $15, it's you got the same magnification as a macro lens. This is what the quarter looks like taken with that lens, this camera, and it's basically 1:1. A reverse coupling ring. That's another $10 or $15 investment. But what you do is, I have a 70 to 300 millimeter lens. I put the reverse ring on it. This is the reversing ring. What you have, the ring has threads on both sides. So you screw this into your lens, and then you screw your other lens, whether it's a 50 or a 25 or 24 millimeter, whatever, you screw it on the other side, and you got two lenses put together. And it'll give you magnification. If you get the right two lenses, you can get up to like 10 times magnification for $15 if you got the lenses available. The only thing you got to remember is that you've got to get a ring that will fit both lenses or use. I got one, my 50 was a 58 millimeter thread. So I got a 58 to 58, and I had to put an adapter on it that made it 62. So I got an adapter that would go from 58 to 62, and that works. And you can get a whole bunch of those Where is it at? There's, I think, 24 adapters here for about 30 bucks. So you can adapt to a lot of things. And when you start using adapters, you'll never have enough. I don't care how many you got. And you don't lose any quality? No. This is 5-to-1 with the 50 millimeter lens screwed to the front of the 300 millimeter lens. So it's not bad. You can see all the little marks and scratches and everything in there. So, then you can get into the stacking thing, but because the depth of field is very shallow. But it's still, if you had like the Canon, what was it, MP65 that would go from 1 to 5 times. So you've got this for $15. So, which they don't make that lens anymore, but Laowa makes some that are the same, 1 to 5. And close-up filters. They are magnifying glasses, basically, that you put on your lens. They come in cheap and then better quality. Canon used to make one that was, I think, a 500D or something, and it was real expensive, $200 or $300. Nisi makes the one that I use, and it's about $130, and you can get them on sale for about $110. But if you put, well, I'm going to show you a graph in a minute, that's going to show what happens when you put them on different lenses and the different magnifications of the lens. Flash. Flash is one of those things that's not really going to make your picture bigger or smaller, but when you are when you have your 50 millimeter lens on 68 millimeters of extension tube, you have if you're at like f16, your effective aperture is going to be like f32. So, and the higher you go in the magnification, that also changes. And if you change your f-stop to f16 and you're at 5 times magnification, your effective aperture is like 114. So you got to have some light, especially when you get into the bigger magnifications. So a regular flash, you can use that if off camera, or even on camera if you have some kind of diffuser and stuff that you can diffuse the light with. And you don't use a whole lot of power, but you get, the higher magnification, the more important it is for to have light. This is a twin flash. It mounts on the front of your lens. It has adapters that'll go into all different kinds of threads. I don't know, there's 6 or 7 adapters that come with it, from 77 to 52 or something, I forget. But they're a little more expensive than your single big flash that you would use everywhere. So it's one of those things, if you're not going to do high magnification, you don't really need one of these. but you do need a regular flash because just, at f32, you have to be in bright sunlight to get a good shot, So if you have a flash, then you can get better pictures with any magnification. Yeah, this is the chart I was talking about. It shows you that if you have a 50 millimeter lens and your native magnification, you see they all come out at about 0.15 to 0.16. That's just, all the lenses are like that in that millimeter range. So you can get on the 50 millimeter, if you have a 25 millimeter extension tube, you can get 0.65. And at 200, you only get 2.9 because you're dividing 200 into 25 instead of 50 into 25. And with the close-up lenses, they come in Dopplers. The Nisi is a 4x or 4 plus 4 Doppler, and at a 200 millimeter lens, you can get 1-to-1, and it's a pretty heavy piece of glass. I think it's 3 lenses in 2 groups, is what they say. So, and it's corrected for chromatic aberrations and all that sort of stuff. So that's why it's fairly expensive. The cheaper ones are only 1 piece of glass and there's no correction. There's, so it's just putting a magnifying glass up in front. And we were talking about the depth of field. When you're at 1 times magnification, whether it's one of these or you've got extension tubes and you've got it set up as 1 times magnification, your depth of field is 2.24 millimeters. So think about that for a second. It's not very much depth of field. And then if you're at 5x, you got 0.27 millimeters of depth of field. So it really gets thin. And then when you're at 10x, you're about 25 microns that don't even go into millimeters. They just start talking about how many microns it is. So that's okay. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about a lot of techniques involved with your shooting. Once you have your camera set up and you know that you want to be at 1-to-1, or you have a reversed lens which is at 1-to-1, you're going to find that, well, autofocus doesn't work on a reversed lens because there's no electrical connection. So as you just have to get close and you go back and forth until you get it in focus and then click the shutter. The flash helps with that. So we want to talk a little bit about how to set your camera up. Of course, there's no way we can actually tell you how to set your camera up there's no one setting that's going to work, but you got a starting point. You start out at least 100 on your shutter speed. That's going to be pretty stable. You're not going to change that unless you go faster, never slower than 100, because if you're hand holding, especially, I mean, if you're on a tripod in a studio, you can go to 20 seconds, it doesn't matter. But, when I'm talking about being out in the field, looking at bugs, you're going to have a fairly fast shutter speed to keep it from being blurry. So then then your f-stop, like I was showing you, you have no depth of field. There's nothing on the screen. Okay. It's just black right now. Oh, okay. There you go. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, they forgot where I was now. Oh, the f-stop. You don't want to be at f2.8 on your lens because that is no depth of field. I think on that chart it was at f16 that I was talking about. Yeah, at 2.8 you got 0.4 millimeters, less than a half a millimeter. So, so as you think about that, so if you start at f10, at one magnification you're going to have 1.3 or something. Well, f11. Just say you start at f11. So now you're at almost 1.6 millimeters. So that's you gain a little bit there, and then your ISO. That's going to be your variable. You're going to stick with whatever f-stop you have, you like. You're going to take a few pictures and look at them and see if what you're trying to take a picture of is in focus enough, and if the exposure's right, whatever ISO. But you're going to adjust the ISO to get a proper exposure, whatever it is, whether it's 100 or 1,000, whatever works to make the exposure correct. And if you're using a flash with a regular macro lens, you can generally use TTL with your flash. If you use extension tubes, since there's no electrical connection, your camera doesn't know what the f-stop is and all that, so TTL won't work with it. So you got to practice adjusting the flash until you get the proper exposure. And what else was it that I was going to talk about here? Oh, and I'm talking, what I've been talking about now mostly is handheld. Like I say, if you're on a tripod, you can especially use a focusing rail that's really, you can get the focus just right wherever you want it. And that makes it nice. But if you're chasing ants, you're never going to be able to. They're so fast, you can't turn the knob fast enough. So you're going to have to do the in and out thing. You can't. And focus rings are basically useless on the macro part because you adjust your lens to the 1-to-1. And if you adjust it, there's only one way to go, is back less than 1-to-1. So that's the focus ring, forget it. It doesn't exist anymore in macro. So the idea is to find what you're going to take a picture of, move back and forth till you get it, and take several pictures till you run a burst. As you're moving in and out, you'll get one that's probably in focus, probably. I was talking to a guy not too long ago, and he says he goes out for an hour. He takes about 45 pictures, and maybe, and he says, and a lot of days he gets 0 keepers, and some days he may get 3 or 4. So it's one of those things where, if, you know, it depends on how sharp and everything you want your critter to be, you know, or your flower or your springtail or whatever it is that you're trying to take pictures of. So so is there any questions? I'm gonna call it a night here. Yes. And you tried to and you were trying to use the rail for the when you do the and not developed for stacking. Oh yeah, that fly, it was done with this focusing rail. Now they have electric ones that will move the rail, move your camera and all that at 2 microns per step if you need it. If you're at 50 times, you're going to need every bit of that. But those are about, well, the stack shot is depending on they have 2 models. They're between $700 and $1,000. The Wii Macro, I don't know what their minimum step is. I've never even seen one, but I've heard about them. They're about $500, and they're supposed to be pretty accurate also. So, you know, it kind of boils down to how much weight the rail will handle. If you want to do it vertical, and the stack shot will hold 11 pounds without it moving, without it drifting. I don't know what the Wii Macro, and there's another one out there also that's not supposed to be very good, but I don't know. I've never seen it. So I have a stack shot. That's why I keep going back to that. Yes. Well, post-production, because like that fly was 100 pictures. And even the spider was in post-production, and because that was about 30, and I don't know of any camera that'll take that many pictures. There may be, but yeah. Yes. Well, if you look at this, and if you have a bug that's 3 millimeters long, and you're shooting at f/16 at 1, you can get a pretty good idea that you're going to have 10 or 12 pictures minimum. And then there's calculators out there on the web that you can get. It'll tell you everything. Some are very complicated as far as you need to know the circle of confusion and you know, how many pixels your sensor has and all that, and they tell you what how much you should move each step. Yes.
Well, are you saying you never use autofocus when you have a macro lens?
No, I'm not saying never. I'm saying you probably won't be able to use macro autofocus, because if you're trying to be 1-to-1, get maximum with this lens at 1 times magnification, it's all the way at the very closest focus. There's no more. If it did, it would go to 2-to-1 like this one. But so you can't really focus with the focus ring or manual focus. Now, if you probably, I'd say everybody here, including myself, I do a lot of close-up photography that's not macro. You get close and you don't care, I use autofocus all the time. Then I just blow it up to as big as I want. So it's that. But when you're talking the seriousness of macro photography, then that's when you got to be at 1:1. And it's kind of one of those drugs or rabbit holes you go down and you get crazy about it.
Because I purchased a 30 one.
Oh, okay.
So maybe it was because of the autofocus, but I'm walking.
Yeah, you set it at your closest focus distance and then you move it back and forth. Or you move your subject if you can. I mean, if there's a flower on a stem and you have it on a tripod, then you can wiggle a flower, You don't have to move your camera back and forth. But either one, there's two ways. You either got to move your subject or you got to move. Liz.
So I wish for people you said, like, you're saying you cannot focus when you've got this, like you've got this stuff all set up. You can't use focus on camera.
Right.
You have to move either the subject or the camera. You're not going to be able to focus.
Right.
And when you're doing those multiple things, I think you figure out what you're doing.
Well, if you're using focus stacking, you focus on the closest part to you, whatever it is, if it's an antenna or a foot or whatever, then you start moving into it. So let's say if you got to go 1 millimeter or so, you can use your rail then to go 1 millimeter, 1 millimeter, 1 millimeter, and then, when you get to the end, then you take all those pictures and you put them in Photoshop. Photoshop's good to about, I'm just going to pick a number, 30 pictures to stack. If you start getting more than that, you need to go to something like Helicon or Zerine. Those are the two programs for stacking multi-images. Yeah. But, yes. What's the difference? Yes, I use Zerine. Zerine, yes. Because of it's easier to edit the pictures, I think, because you can do a lot of editing right in Zerine. And a few years back, I got a free copy of Helicon, and it just, both of them, and I was trying to play with them. And I found that it was easier for me to use Zerine than it was Helicon. But that's me. There's so many people that use both of them. I don't really want to say one's better than the other. Yes.
So we're starting out, and we're not going to do like a lot, like a lot of that.
Yeah.
What would you recommend for starting out? What kind of subjects and how many?
Well, if you're going to be in macro, the easy way is to get a reversing ring that'll go on your camera. And if you have a 50 millimeter lens, then you'll be at 1.5 times magnification. And that's a pretty good size magnification. So for $15, how can you go wrong? I mean, I don't think anybody's going to go hungry if they lose $15. Not in this room, because everybody's spent a lot more than that on their cameras. So it's a really cheap way to get started and to find out if you like it or not. Because like I said, there's some tricks you got to learn to use, and you got to have the proper mental attitude to make it work. You got to be relaxed. You got to be persistent. You can't take failure as as anything. because you're going to have a lot of failures, especially in the beginning. You're going to have a lot more. I mean, I still have lots of them. I did a whole stack not too long ago of about 150 shots, and they were all crap. So that was an hour and a half was wasted. You'll find that the higher magnification you go, you have to be, if you're hand holding, you've got to be really careful, because the vibration it'll show up as fuzzy. And what happened to me, I was in my studio, I had something and I put it up on a very thin needle and it vibrated. So my stacks, it was over here once and over here once because I was shooting it at 10 times. So, I mean, it only had to move just a micron or two and it comes out fuzzy. So whatever reason, the vibration was too much for the way that I had the bug mounted. And I did the whole stack and it was just trash. Yes.
Have you done any focus stacking other than facility, like something like that?
Yes.
A lot of through the frames and all of that. What's your experience?
It works pretty good. Yeah. That I use a lot, especially in landscapes and stuff like that. If I want to get from 2 feet in front of me to infinity, then I'll focus stack. I just did one. I'm going to have to put this on the web. I did a focus stack with my Z9 and a 400 millimeter lens of a road that's kind of up and down. I ended up in my stack with 75 pictures. And that was all done with the autofocus stacking in the camera. So that was great for me. And it's from right at my feet all the way to infinity. So so yes, that's a great way. I don't think it's so great for macro because it doesn't have that short of a, it's physically turning your lens to focus it. So half of the stuff here, there's no electrical connection to your lens, so it can't do it, and things like that. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but it would be all the way, you got that 1 to 5 or something, the steps that you take, I would have to be all the way down to 1 to see if that would work. I haven't ever tried that though with that. So yes.
So again, on that, I was saying what subject? So you think like flowers, when you pick the flower, bring it inside, so it's not.
Oh, sure. Well, that's a good way to start. Yeah, or anything. Pick a whisk out of your kitchen drawer and look at that because that has a big bow in it. And if you start taking a picture of that at 1 to 1, it's going to look completely different. I did a fork once for a thing at Kendall Camera Club, and I just took a fork and have it set up. It had the 4 tines, and they were all nice and crisp and sharp, and it went off because, out of focus. You couldn't see probably but 3 or 4 millimeters of the end of the fork, and nobody guessed what it was. So you can do things like that. You don't have to even, if you got a flower you can go pick, that's fine. But if you want to do 1 to 1, you got to have something that's going to fit on your sensor. So which means if you have a full frame, it's 36 millimeters. Anything longer than that is not going to fit, and 25 millimeters high. So it's getting pretty small at 1:1. And if you have a crop sensor, it's going to be, I forget what they are now, 25 to, I forget the whole thing. But it's going to be, the crop sensor does not magnify your picture. If you have a 1:1 lens on and you take a crop picture, I think I did that here. That's not it. Okay. Oh, maybe I didn't. I thought I did that, but I guess not. So, so whatever the magnification of whatever you're using, you know, if you have if you're using a 1:1 macro lens and you have a bug that's 28 millimeters long, you can't get it all in a crop frame camera. So that's the other thing. Then you have to start shooting smaller objects to get it all in frame. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
And that's it, folks. Have a good evening. And for the 15 or 20 who are going to Carrabba's, enjoy the evening. And we'll see you on Zoom in March. Have a good night. Thank you. And thank you, Bob.